Will, for the past few weeks, everybody, well, really the past few months, a lot of people have been discussing this Pooh Shiesty case and discussing what type of evidence do they have. A couple of weeks back, Shiesty's attorney filed a motion, which I believe was done just to kind of, see what kind of evidence was out there. And so in this motion, he alleged, hey, the only thing that they have against my client is the word of this guy. And boy, did that take a very wild turn. A wild turn. So the government comes back and they release still images from the video. They didn't release the actual video, but they released still images. And these still images show that, as this situation played out, you could see Pooh Shiesty, as you see him right there on the right. They got Gucci's face covered up with the yellow. He got the yellow on, but they got his initials over him. And then one of Shiesty's boys, who they said had a Draco. They also say that they have cooperation of all 5 victims and witnesses, cell phone data, surveillance video placing them at the scene, and the video that Wright Jr., aka Big 30, recorded in the room. He tried to delete that video when he was arrested, but they ended up going in his phone and retrieving it. Now, another thing that I want to point out is that his attorney was attempting to argue that this case has no federal jurisdiction because Shiesty never traveled across state lines with the phone. This is something that I want y'all to pay attention to because a lot of people get this misconstrued. A lot of these guys say, well, the feds didn't pick the case up because they couldn't prove that I traveled across state lines with the gun. They don't have to. All they have to do is show that the communication happened across state lines, that the phone was sold across state lines, anything affecting interstate commerce. You don't have to personally travel with anything. Another thing that I want to point out is they have information that basically since, the time that Shiesty was locked up, it says right here, Williams Jr. had been signed to RD's recording label for over 5 years, though throughout much of this relationship, Williams was federally incarcerated. During his incarceration, Lontrell Williams Sr., Jr.'s father and business manager, made numerous unsuccessful attempts to renegotiate the terms of Williams Jr.'s contract with RD, which is Gucci Mane, including trying to obtain the rights to his masters. Now, in this document, it says that Gucci was willing to renegotiate the payout. So he was willing to renegotiate how much money Shiesty was making, but he wasn't really willing to relinquish control of the masters. Once Shiesty was released, he continued to push for his masters, which again, Gucci is a businessman. I can understand why Gucci was unwilling to give up the masters. But for the people who were saying Gucci was doing bad business, it clearly says that, it said right here, while RD remained open to negotiating certain aspects of Williams Jr.'s contract, such as album payouts, RD was adamant that he would not give Williams Jr. the rights to his masters. It was under the pretext of continuing these negotiations that RD believed he was invited to Dallas. On January 10th, RD traveled to Texas to attend this meeting with his photographer, his close friend, and 2 former police officer security guards. Shiesty arrived with his people, at the studio. He spoke on the phone with what the victims believe was his parole officer, who said he was not supposed to be out. After this call, Williams asked to speak with Gucci in a room. That phone call, it seems like, kind of forced his hand because he didn't have time to play around, and he had put all of these guys together. And so it's like, all right, I got to do what I got to do right here, right now. The craziest part to me is that they actually filmed it themselves. You didn't get caught on the surveillance camera from across the street or the video footage from in the studio. You actually filmed it yourself and then tried to destroy the phone as if they can't just go in and retrieve the data from the physical. Even if you break the phone and break the chips, there's still ways that they can get the data from there. Even crazier than that is the fact that they actually planned this. They planned this in a text thread, in a group chat. So while Shiesty's attorney is trying to argue, hey, it can't be a federal case or affect interstate commerce because he was already in Dallas, he never left Texas. There is text message evidence of him saying, hey, I need 6 certified guys to come to Texas. We already got the cars. We already got everything. We finna pull up on WAP. We pulling up on WAP. That's what the messages say. So this shows that you put these guys together with the intent of meeting Gucci Mane. They were here for that purpose. And, the cars that were used, all of this was orchestrated and put together. It's not a coincidence. It's going to be hard to dispute or refute the facts that this was not organized for this purpose. When you're saying we got cars, we need people, we pulling up on WAP. Those 3 things right there bring all of that together. So that was a kind of crazy argument from the attorney. I mean, I would assume that they have this evidence themselves. So why he would file that, I don't know, but he did. And it is what it is. This takes me back, though. And look at this. It says, this evidence is more than sufficient to surpass the jurisdictional hurdle of federal prosecution for this kidnapping. Williams Jr.'s assertion that the defendant's phone itself must be used across state lines in furtherance of the kidnapping simply misunderstands the law. And it's crazy to me that I know that's a misinterpretation of the law, but this attorney that he done spent all of this money for don't know that. Like, how you a paid federal attorney and you don't understand that. Anyway, it takes me back. This is from 2019, but this is from Shiesty's previous case. It takes me back to how the feds were even able to identify Chopper Gang members because they were all in a group chat. And in this group chat, they discussed stealing cars and purchasing legitimate guns and getting rid of the hot guns. Just a bunch of crazy stuff that you would think after, participating in the group chat the first time and then it all ended up in federal paperwork, that they wouldn't do it again, but they did it again. They did it. This is another thing, right? It talks about the conspiracy to rob. It talks about how they planned everything. But in this document, they point out the fact that Shiesty was actually involved with one of the employees. He was involved with one of the VOA employees, somebody who was supposed to be monitoring him and making sure, he is doing what he's supposed to do as far as probation. These are the people that take your breathalyzer test. These are the people who, you may contact or call if you're trying to get movement, the people who schedule and improve your movement. So in this paperwork, it's come out that Shiesty was involved in a personal relationship with one of these people. And immediately I thought back to Pooh Shiesty's father saying that he knew that they were coming. Remember that? When Shiesty's father got arrested, they said that he was in the back of the car saying that, I knew y'all were coming and things of that nature. Basically letting them know that they had inside connects. So it's looking like he may give her up. Remember, I told y'all, this is a tricky situation. He could cooperate and not cooperate against Shiesty. He could get in trouble for this situation and just cooperate, and with the wave of things that we've seen, it's very likely that nobody is going to hold him to certain standards because the person he's cooperating against is actually employed by the BOP. They actually employed by something called VOA, which is Volunteers of America, but that company is a contractor that the BOP hires to help them with monitoring and managing inmates and people who are on house arrest and things like that. But again, he basically gave her up already. When he said, hey, we got some inside word, we know what's going on, he pretty much gave her up. So I'm interested to see how this is going to play out. I caught a lot of backlash when I was saying, hey, by Big 30 saying I was there, but all I did was stand by the door. He's basically confirming that this situation happened. And people saying, no, he ain't going to stick to that because they going to say he wasn't there and all this and this. You know, and the same with his father. By his father saying, hey, I didn't do anything but print out the contracts. I didn't know what was going on. They basically saying, yeah, we was there. We was in the room when it happened. Shiesty was in the room when it happened, but we didn't do anything. Now, people was trying to say, you know, I ain't gonna say no names, but y'all know the creators I'm talking about that was targeting me, saying, hey, you wrong. You trying to say they snitching and you trying to say this. I wasn't trying to say anything but what I said. By them admitting that I was in the room, but I just stood by the door. I blocked it, but you are confirming that something occurred. There was a meeting and that people were there. Now that we know that there's actually video footage of it, you know, I'm going to leave that up to y'all to interpret. But it was the Big 30 paper. His lawyer argued. My client didn't do anything. He just stood by the door. His father's attorney argued. My client didn't do anything. He just printed the papers. So it's coming down to who actually did something. They didn't deny being there or that anything happened. They just said they didn't participate. So it's going to come down to that. It's going to be real tricky, but we'll see how it plays out. In the meantime, I just wanted to bring y'all this update on this situation. I'm pretty sure a lot of people done talked about it by now, but y'all ain't hearing it from me. And I know this is where y'all want to hear it from. So with that said, I'm going to wrap this one up. Hit that hype button before you get up out of here. Hit that like button before you get up out of here. Like, comment, subscribe, all of that YouTube stuff. I'm out.